In a previous video, we talked about the easiest way to add videos to your Next.js application. That's the video that you see on the screen. I'm going to include a link in the description, and we're going to reference it back throughout the video. But today, we're going to talk about the company or the technology behind that package, which is Mux. Now, Mux is a video hosting provider or platform that allows you to upload, store, and stream your videos. I found it to be a good choice because it has a very good developer experience in terms of documentation, but also a very fair pricing strategy. We're going to dive into different products or different services that they provide, and also to the documentation, how we can use it, and also the pricing details, because oftentimes the way different providers out there price video streaming or video storage is different. We're going to talk about Mux's specific pricing strategy and how I think it's cost effective. I'm actually using this for my own course platform. So if you have taken the Next.js course that I have, I'm using Mux as a video provider for these lessons that you can see here. It's pretty fast. My experience has been very good. We're going to dive into the code, into my code, actually see this implementation as well. And I'm also planning to have a part 2 video to this series where we are going to actually build a video course platform. Maybe we replicate what I have had created for myself, or just build a generic project that you could also use on your own, whether you're thinking of publishing your own video course instead of using the platforms out there. You just want to self-host your course, you can use that project, or you can build a business out of it, or a SaaS application out of it, where you can invite other people to create their courses on their platforms. Whether or not we're going to have that video coming up, which is a deeper dive into using the API and actually building a Next.js application with this. But in this video, we're going to talk about Mux and how we're going to use it, so we would understand the concepts, and then we're going to follow this up with a project. So stay tuned for that project as well. But for now, let's go back to the Mux website. As I mentioned, they have different services: Mux Video, Mux Data, and Mux Player. So let's talk about each one of them. So Mux Video is encoding or uploading your videos and then storing them and then streaming them on demand or live. So that's the Mux Video service. Now, tied to that is their data layer, which is analytics that you can use to see the streaming performance on the user end. Now, we're going to see inside my own dashboard, so you get a hang of what this data actually includes. And then lastly is the Mux Player, which brings this two together. So the easiest way to serve up a video that's hosted on Mux is through the Mux Player, which also ties into the data. So it just brings all three services together for you to host the video and then deliver it to your users and then access the data behind the scene. So let's go to the video and explain what's going on there. I'm going to gloss over what they have here, and then we're going to jump into the documentation to actually see the implementation of this inside any kind of application, or specifically Next.js. So we have on-demand videos or live streaming. They support both, so you can do both with Mux. Seamless integration with our open source player. This is the Mux Player. They have a React component, and they also have a web component, so you can use outside of React in any JavaScript library framework like Svelte or even native vanilla JavaScript. So it's not specific to React, but we are going to look at it in the context of React and Next.js. But the underlying player is actually a web component. So that's as far as the video goes. So let's also go to the data. As I mentioned, it gives you analytics data on how your videos or streamings are performing from your users, and that might help you to scale or find or flag any issues that you might have with your or within your structure. Now, let's go to the Mux Player and also see the features on Mux Player before we jump into the documentation. Now, Mux Player is everything you need to play your Mux videos. It brings the platform, the video platform, and the data all together. And it also gives you a nice player for web, mobile, or iOS platforms. It is responsive, and it has cool features such as this thumbnail hover preview. So as you hover over this video, you can see the thumbnail, a feature that you might be familiar with from maybe YouTube, that when you hover on the timeline, you can see previews. It ties in with the data, as I mentioned. You have the MOX data built in. We're going to dive into the pricing at the end in more details. But on the baseline, or when you are serving up videos up to 1080p or HD quality, I think the data is free for the first 10,000 minutes. For example, for me, that is sufficient for me to get the data for free every month. But we're going to look at the pricing there. I apologize if this is a bit small. When I make this a bit bigger, I won't be able to see the menu the way that I am used to seeing it. So I apologize if it is a bit small. When we are going to dive into the documentation, I'll make it full screen so we can just talk, so you can see better. Now, keyboard controls. So everything that you would want from a player, it's actually implemented in this MOX player. Chromecast support, so you can cast your videos onto your TV. A responsive design, so if you're watching it from a mobile, the controls change, the width changes, so it's a responsive player, and it's using the adaptive bitrate streaming. So what this means is that it is using the HLS technology, and it's adaptive based on the bandwidth that your users have. So what MOX does is once it encodes your video, it encodes or stores an original or one video or one version of your video. And then on demand, it can serve different versions or different bit rates or resolutions of this video depending on the user's bandwidth. So if somebody connects to your site with a lower connection or internet speed, they're going to get a lower quality so that they can still continue streaming. And if somebody has the bandwidth for it, it would offer them a higher resolution or quality. You can always change the quality as well. So the users have the ability to change the quality there, change the speed, skip ahead or skip back. All the normal good controls that you would expect from a modern player is already in here. Now, as I mentioned, the underlying component is a web component called MOX Player, which is compatible with any JavaScript framework. But they do also have this MOX Player as a React component or a React library or version of it that you can specifically use in React applications. Now, you can also customize the UI. We're going to look at this again in the context of my own implementation by changing primary colors or showing versus hiding controls. So you can customize this using CSS variables that they expose. So with this introduction out of the way, let's just jump into the documentation and see these different implementations in more details. Now, before we continue, I want to mention that MOX is kindly sponsoring this video. So thank you to the MOX team for supporting the channel and my work by sponsoring this video. Now, let's continue with this Get Started guide here that allows us to create an account, get an API access token, send a video or upload a video by sending a post request to an authenticated endpoint that we create, wait for the webhook or for this processing to be done to be able to then watch the video using a MOX player inside of our application. So we need to have an account. If you haven't already, you can just create an account on mox.com. You can create an account for free. I've just logged into my account. Now that we're here, let me actually show you around the platform. We have this data section, which is the different metrics or analytics that you can see for streaming your video on the user end. There's different breakdowns from operating systems, countries, devices, and users if you have provided that metadata to your MOX player, which I'm going to show you inside my code a little later. So you can just break down, get some insight of your user's experience or streaming on the other end of this platform. You have the video section. This is where you would manage your assets. So these are the different videos that I have. Each one has a specific ID and a playback ID, which you can provide to your MOX player, as you can see here in this component. Let me actually make this also bigger. So you have different information, different metadata about this specific video. For example, you have the aspect ratio, which you can use to style the player. We're going to see that also inside the code to avoid cumulative layout shift once this video or the player is being loaded. So that's what's happening. And you have the settings where you can go to your access tokens, whether you are using MOX to programmatically upload your videos or you're using the next video component, which I explained in that previous video. you'd have to create an access token to be able to talk or communicate with the Mux platform. Now, as long as creating a new asset in Mux or uploading a video, as I mentioned, you have two different ways to do it. You can do it programmatically. We're going to look at inside the API. You can send a post request to an authenticated endpoint from Mux, or you can just come into your dashboard and hit create new asset. This is going to open up a new page. You can post in a URL, or you can just upload directly from your local machine. So you run this request. This is going to open up a dialog for you to just select the file. Then this is going to kick in the process of uploading the video, processing it or encoding it, and then you can then serve it up using or see it inside of your dashboard. Once it's done, it will show you the status ready, and that's when you can just copy this playback ID and drop it inside of your Mux player, which we're going to see in action. So let's go back to the documentation. From a high level, you will create an API access token to be able to send a post request to /assets in your Mux account. This can be an authenticated URL to protect your API endpoints or your account against malicious users just uploading videos to your account. Once this is done, you're going to wait for the ready status of your video being processed. You can listen to a webhook sent from Mux, so you can create another endpoint in your application. We're going to look at this inside of a Next.js app in a second inside the documentation. But this is waiting for a webhook to say, okay, the video is uploaded, it's encoded, it's ready to be streamed. Then you can watch this video either directly from services that Mux provides, or implementing a Mux player and pasting in your playback ID inside your Mux player, and then streaming your video inside your application. So actually, let's go to the upload videos section. So here it talks about the two different encoding tiers that you have available when uploading videos to Mux. If you scroll down, you can see there's the smart encoding tier and the baseline encoding tier, and that you have to specify which one you want to use when you're sending a post request to upload a video or asset to Mux. Now down here, there's a feature comparison between the two tiers, and the main difference is that the baseline tier doesn't support live streaming. So if you need live streaming feature, you need to use the smart encoding. They're also slightly different in their pricing structure. We're going to look at that at the end. And in terms of the quality of the video, baseline, as I mentioned, only goes up to 1080p or HD quality versus the 4K, which is in smart encoding. Now, if you want features such as MP4 support or multi-track audio, this is when you have multi-track or audio tracks for one single video, the smart encoding actually supports that. Or if you want auto-generated captions for your videos, you should use the smart encoding. Now, as far as the pricing goes, I want to mention this real quick here, that the baseline is free to start. So the encoding on the baseline is actually free for the first 10,000 minutes of your videos, I think, per month. And this is what I'm using inside my application as well. My videos are up to 1080p or HD quality. But it is also useful for when you're creating a project that has user-generated content. Because the encoding is free, you're not going to get billed for user-generated content, versus if you're using the smart for where you want to enable users to upload videos to your application, this might be costly just to encode them. Now, encoding is a one-time fee, so it gets encoded once, but there's still this difference between the pricing structures of these two different tiers, so you can see which one is better suited for your application and then choose that tier. Now, as I mentioned, there are different ways to upload your files to Mux. You could use the dashboard, as I just showed, or use the API to send a post request to an authenticated URL. You can also use another component from the Mux library, which is called the Mux Uploader. You can use this component. It's a drop-in component that you can use inside your apps, and you can pass it an authenticated URL, which is going to then use that URL or your account to upload those videos to your account, like so. There's also more guides if you are using Android devices or iOS devices. Now let's go down to the play your video. Now you can play your Mux videos using any HLS player as it is described in this guide. But we're going to dive into the Mux player. As I mentioned, this is a drop-in web component from the Mux team that makes it very easy to play your assets from your Mux account. Now, this is a web component, so you can use it with any JavaScript library, but there is also a React version of the player from Mux at Mux Player React that you could use inside your React application. So you can install the library, whether you're using the vanilla JavaScript one or the React one. And once you have that, you can bring in the Mux player inside of your application. And all you need to pass to this is your playback ID. Now going back to our assets and our dashboards, once you have uploaded a video, if it is programmatically, you're going to get the playback ID in the response. But if it is through the dashboard, you can see the playback ID here. So you copy this playback ID and you just drop it inside this component, and it just shows the player and it connects to your Mux account and starts streaming this video. Now, as far as other information you can pass to it, you can pass in metadata, things like video ID, title, and user ID. This metadata is hooked or it's tied into the data or Mux data platform. It's not for the player itself, but if you're using the data platform or you want to get the analytics on the other end, if you provide the ID, the title, or the user, specific user that was viewing this, it helps getting better segmentation when you're looking at your data inside the Mux data dashboard. Now, as I mentioned, there's adaptive controls, and you can customize the look and feel of your player, passing in accent colors, like so here, and providing metadata, whether it is through the web component, like you see here, or through the Mux player, which is for the React version. Now that we're here, let's actually go to my application. I just want to quickly show my implementation as well. So let me make this a bit smaller. So as you can see here, I have this Mux player inside of the lessons page. So inside this page where we are viewing this, for each of these lessons, we have this Mux player video. It is receiving this playback ID. I'm passing in some metadata. I'm passing in an accent color. So if you look at this red thingy here, and the accent color is what I have set here. And the Mux player, the React component, also accepts the style property. So you can style it using the style prop or with the class name, like any other regular React component. For example, one thing that you would want to do is set the aspect ratio of your video on a style tag or inside your classes. I'm using Tailwind, so I'm passing in an arbitrary aspect ratio here of 16 and 9. And if you don't have the aspect ratio of your videos, it's coming back in the response that you get once you uploaded your video, but it also inside of your platform here. So if you look at a specific video, you can see this aspect ratio down here. So you can use that same aspect ratio, which is going to prevent a cumulative layout shift as this video or the player is loading up. So if I now go to another video, you can see the space is reserved for it and there is no layout shift once I click between different videos, and it's pretty quick how it loads up. Now I'm doing more. I'm listening to on time update. Actually, the Mux player emits all the events that the video element inside the HTML5 video element also has. So you can listen to different events. For example, here I'm updating the time. So as the user makes the progress, I want to keep track. So when they come back, they can continue where they left off. And also when they finish streaming a specific video, I want to mark that as completed. So I'm listening to different events that the Mux player has, which is basically the same events that you get on the video HTML5 element. Go back to our full screen so you can see better. That was using the Mux player. So let's close this off. Another thing I want to mention here, there's different guides here that you can dive into, things from controlling your playback resolution, auto-playing, examples, different examples and use cases that you can have here, modifying your videos or your assets, different endpoints that you have. There's an API reference that you can dive into, a webhook reference. I won't be able to cover them all. I'm just going to pinpoint the stuff that stood out to me or I deem to be important, but you can dig deeper into the documentation for your specific use case. Now there's also this web frameworks and CMS integration section. So on the web frameworks, you can see a Next.js specific guide here that explains how to use Mux or the Mux platform in a Next.js application, why you would want to use it, and that you could use the next video component to just makes it easy. Now, from a high level, if you haven't seen that video, just to draw the contrast between using the next video component versus the Mux player, is that the next video is a package that once you install it, it initializes your application or it configures your application to work with this package and Mux. It provides you with a videos directory where you can just drag and drop files inside your videos component. You then need to run a sync command to sync this or upload this to your Mux account, and it just then serves an optimized version of your video, just like how you would use the next image component inside of Next.js. But if you want a more granular control over giving the users, for example, to upload an image or using the Mux player, you can use the Mux player and the Mux uploader inside your Next.js app, which is what we're going to do in the project that I mentioned. It's coming up, where we would create a video course platform using this same technology. Now, another thing I want to mention is integrations that there are for your CMS. So if you're using Sanity, Contentful, Dado CMS, or Strappy, they have integrations with Mux, so your content creators don't have to leave the CMS platform or dashboard to upload a video to Mux. They can just do it directly from that same dashboard because there's an integration behind the scene that syncs whatever you upload to your CMS, if you're using any of these options, to the Mux account. So if you're using any of them, just dive into this documentation, but it's good to know that these integrations exist. That makes your job as a developer and also the content creator on the user side easier. Now, I think that was a good high-level overview of the Mux platform and the different features and services available. Now, at the end, let's also talk about the different pricing tiers or structures in Mux, so we have a sense of how much this is going to cost for us. Now, we already talked about the different encoding tiers. When we think about video platforms or the pricing structure here, there's three different pillars. The first one is encoding. That's when you upload your video and Mux or any other platform encodes your video. Now, the second pillar or the second aspect is the storage. This is the ongoing monthly fee that you would have to pay to store your videos. And the third aspect of it is actually delivering that video, whether it's on demand or live streaming. So we've talked about the encoding. We had the smart tier versus the baseline encoding. Now, the baseline encoding, as I mentioned, is free for the first 10,000 minutes, up to 1080p quality. If you want 2K or 4K, you have to go to the smart encoding feature. Now, one thing I want to mention that is the encoding price is just a one-time fee. Once you encode a video or upload a video once, it's done. If you're baseline, it's free. If you're on the smart tier, you'd have to pay per minute. So depending on where exactly you are. So as you can see, as you scale, the price per minute actually comes down. So hopefully, if you have a lot of videos, the price would also make sense if you're using the smart tier. Now, there is this spreadsheet actually combining or showing all of these things together, so you don't have to create a spreadsheet for yourself. So there's different number of videos that or minutes that you have. First 5,000, 10,000, 25,000. There's the baseline tier versus the smart. And the different resolutions that you're using, because they can be different in the smart encoding. As you can see here, the price is a bit different. So it's not only based on the number of videos that you have and the minutes that you have and the tier that you have selected, but also on the resolution that's being streamed. And then there is storage. So the second pillar or the second aspect of this cost is a storage. Now, once you have encoded your videos, you have to then store them somewhere. This is in a global CDN network from Mux's team, but this is a monthly cost that you have to pay. Again, there is the baseline tier and how much it's going to cost you to store your videos. And then there's a smart tier. Again, you have this same categories in this Excel spreadsheet, so you can actually punch in the exact numbers or the exact tier or qualities that you expect to get a total cost estimate. And then we have the delivery, which is actually when a user starts watching your video on demand or a live stream. Again, the pricing for the baseline versus the smart, they're actually the same up to 1080p. As you can see here, the prices are the same. It's only if you go to 2K or 4K resolution that you can see different prices here, because it's basically not even available on the baseline. And again, you can see that the information for streaming down here too. Now going back to the docs, here it also talks about different strategies that you can use to bring your cost down. For example, you can have different encoding tiers, baseline versus a smart. I'm personally using the baseline. I'm serving up to 1080p or HD quality. You have resolution-based pricing. So as you could see in the chart, there are different tiers or different pricings per minute for what you are trying to serve up. If it is up to 720, 1080p, 4K, or 2K. So you can play around with these different levers that you have to get the cost or cost effectiveness that's making sense for your specific business. And there's volume discounts, as you saw in the different charts. As your scale goes up, the price per minute comes down. So you can read through this. There's also some features that are only available to the smart encoding tier, such as multi-track audios and whatnot. But to just get a rough idea of this pricing, at least for the use case that I have, I've created this chart of my own, assuming that you have 100 videos, let's say, and each one are 30 minutes. This is the average length in minute. So there's three different costs that you have: encoding, storage, and delivery. For encoding, because I'm using the baseline, it's basically for free. This is, again, up to the first 10,000 minutes, but I haven't gone over that quota. But if you have more videos, you might have, you're going to have to pay for encoding over 10,000 minutes per month. Now for the storage, you're going to have to pay 4/10 of a cent. I'm not sure if I'm reading that correct, but it's 0.004. And that is a monthly cost of storing the video. So if I'm assuming that I have 100 videos and each one is 30 minutes long. Now delivery is actually delivering. So your users, it's assuming that your users are going to watch those 100 videos and they're going to watch 100% of them, which is not the case, because sometimes they don't use all of your videos, they don't view all of the videos, or they don't view the complete video. They might just drop off 50, 60, or 80% of it. But I'm assuming this is the max number of videos and max view count or view percentage. And this is the per minute cost that I have. And it comes to like $16 a month. If I have 100 video, if I have 1,000 videos, 30 minutes long, it's going to be $156 a month. So it's very, very cost effective for what they provide. The dashboard, the data analytics that they have, the easy drop-in components, fantastic API and documentation that they have. So you can play around with this to have a ballpark idea of how much it's going to cost for you. I'm going to include a link in the description for this one as well. But if you want to reference a better version of this, it's the spreadsheet that we got out of the documentation. Again, up there when it talks about different tiers, there is this link to this spreadsheet. You can open it up, play around with the number of videos that you had, the average duration that they have, the different tiers that you want to select, or different resolutions, to get an even more accurate understanding of your cost. And that's a wrap for this video, folks. We talked about the Mux platform, which is a video infrastructure for hosting and streaming videos. We talked about the data layer, which helps you gain insight into the user experience on the other end of streaming these videos. We talked about the web component, the drop-in Mux player that helps you easily stream in or bring in the UI to play these videos. We also see this in action inside my own website for the course that I have. If you haven't checked it already, there's a link in the description. It's a Next.js course. I also am publishing more courses as we move on. There's courses for Clerk, authentication, and NextAuth, the new version that's coming out. So definitely check it out. If you have any questions, like always, hit me up in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.